Hi, this is Sean. Welcome back to my channel. Today is going to be about the rules of thirds, the triplet major. I'll explain what the rules of thirds are, how you can use them, whether you're just getting started with improvising or whether you've been improvising for a long time. We'll get into example phrases and all that kind of stuff. If this is your first time here, please do subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when I upload new content. And please do hit the like button. And if you've got something good to say, please make a comment, because these things are really helping us grow so that I can do more of this for you. With that, I'm ready to begin. So rules of thirds, what are they? The rules of thirds are short phrases. They are built on things I've learned, things I've heard, things I do in my own playing to create some authentic ways to build improvisation phrases. So for me, learning to improvise isn't just making it up as you go along and hope for the best. It's not just about scales. I think you need a few things. First of all, some fluency with standards. And I think a lot of people launch into improvisation without that. Secondly, you do need some scales, scale type phrases, some intervallic things, in other words, gaps between notes, which the rules of thirds are, and some sort of connective material as well. So the rules of thirds are based on the fact that our chords, if we take just a C major 7, are built on thirds. So this is a major third, minor third, this is a major third. C7 has a major third here, a minor third, and another minor third. C minor 7 has a minor, major, minor. You can do this with all your chords, and even the ones that look like they don't have thirds in, if you invert them, like a C major 6 chord, you invert it down, becomes a minor 7 or C6, you get minor, major, minor. Why is this significant? Because one way to develop your sound is to try and get chord notes on the beat. Doesn't have to be all the time, and it doesn't have to even be most of the time, but it can be some of the time, and it will give you real shape to your playing. So the rules of thirds are phrases that join major thirds to other things, minor thirds to other things, that kind of stuff, okay? But I do find that when I first created the method, I found that there were so many different possibilities I literally couldn't sleep, and I had to sing phrases into my phone to record them and get them out of my head. But then as I worked on them myself and taught them, I found that you just need a few and to get really good at them. So I'm not going to try and present all of them in one lesson and confuse people. I'm going to just focus on one, the triplet major. So what is the triplet major? So triplet major up. So this is a major third. 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. So we're going to be using that when we get a major third. This is how you play a triplet major. So we have 1 triplet, 2 and 3, 4. Pretty straightforward. If you're just getting into jazz improvisation, you want to be able to play eighths most of the time. But sometimes you want some triplets as well. Okay, so of course they'll be mixed with other things. So I'm not saying the rules of thirds are an entire system and you don't need anything else. Rather than saying here's everything, get good at one little thing. So that's a triplet major. So the next thing I'll be thinking about is if I take that C major scale, where in the scale do I get major thirds? Well, there's a major third. Let's just look at the C major 7th chord to begin with and say, okay, there's a major third down there. There's a major third up here. So we should be able to do something with that when we're creating phrases. So the first thing I'll do is take some scale phrases and insert some triplet majors in them to see what happens. Let's take simplest thing we could do, upper C major scale, root to 5th and back, right? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. I could put a triplet major right at the beginning like this. Okay, not a complicated phrase. Let me do that again. Fingering wise, I'd probably put number 2 on that C. 3, 4, 5 and down until my 1 is back on C, right? So a note about triplets here. What most of my students will do as soon as they start to learn triplets is they'll rush them. Like that, right? So keep them da ba da 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 da. 1 triplet, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. Okay, 3, 4. Fine. Let's say if we took a scale from here. Okay, so I'm running from the E up to the B this time, the third to the seventh. Okay, well, there's a major third in here, so could I insert that in the middle of that phrase? Maybe, let's try it. Maybe at the end of it, or that would be fine. Let's do it that way, so it's the equivalent. So we go up the scale. Here's the triplet major. Did you notice something? That this triplet major, up the scale, down, and up a third, right? So we land on a third. We could have called this B a half step, or we could have called it a scale note in C. And it depends how you see it. So I see it as a half step. And the reason is because if I come up here and think a scale note, now I would have this. And I actually prefer doing this. So it's a half step under this third, right? Right there. So here was my phrase again. Fine. You know, take little things like that, do what I always love to do, chop off the first note. So chopping off the first note will be the first E, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Starts to swing. Something like that, right? So don't worry about phrases sounding simple or basic. I find that working the fundamentals always leads to something pretty that you want to keep in the end. Let's now learn the triplet major down pattern. So if we want to descend this third, what we can do is this. It's not exactly the same rule. I wanted to have variety when I wrote these. So we're aiming to get from E to C, this major third, descending, right? Doorbell. So what we do is we go up a scale step, down the scale, a half step, down to the C. Still begins with a triplet, right? 1 triplet, 2 and 3, 4. Okay, try that if you're at your piano. Okay, now remember we said the other major third on C major 7 is here. So this one will be, we have a half step up, down the scale, and, well, let's say a scale step up, which happens to be a half step, right? Down, and a half step approaching the G. That's the important bit to realize. You'll hear Charlie Parker use things like that all the time. That's not a Parker phrase, but you'll hear those sorts of things all the time. So as we work the triplet major down phrases, we could do the same thing. We could combine with scales, but let's do it a bit differently this time. Let's combine them with other intervals. So let's take these chords going up the scale of C, right? So I'm taking 4-note chords, 1, 3, 5, 7, then from the second degree, etc., all the way up. And this time I'm going to put a half step beneath those, and I'll use a triplet. It won't be a triplet major or a minor yet. You'll see what happens. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and triplet, 1, 2, 3, and triplet, 1, 2, 3. This is a great thing to practice in itself. And you start to feel it's not that hard to get a strategy to create improv phrases. Improvising over a tune, different story. Teach that on Jazz Skills as well, and some of that here, but really have a strategy for just building phrases to start with. Okay, let's see what we can do with this now. So we could go 1, 2, 3 and triplet, and this was the triplet major descend that we spoke about earlier, right? So we could do this over a 1, 6, 2, 5. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So further study on these can be the other chord tones. So for example, the chord tones we haven't used so far, these intervals, right? So this is a minor third, major third, so that's going to be handy. Another minor third. So this could be useful on a D minor 7th, on let's say an F major 7th, and on some other places too, but I would practice the triplet major up. Notice how it wasn't like this. It was still a scale note above. And then a half step before the end, right? So hopefully that gives you an idea that this can go much further as well. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you found that useful. I have other lessons on the rules of thirds that I'll link below. And if you enjoy this, then perhaps you'll consider joining me on Jazz Skills, where we have lots of improvisation lessons, lessons for newer people, developing fluency, getting really fluent with the chord progressions that we use in tunes commonly so that you have the freedom to start to improvise in the first place, and much more, including Barry Harris movements, voicings, tunes taught on several levels, live webinars, support from me, a vibrant community, and a good kick up the behind if you need it. Thanks a lot for watching. See you on the next one. Bye for now.